Welcome back to Steele and Vance. I want to say it's the most wonderful time of the year. Back to school. It is for me
all year round with no kids, but for you and for like millions of parents, the kids are actually back in the classroom.
Routine.
There's a few concerns this year. There always are.
Yeah.
But joining us in studio is the brand new Bctf President, Clint Johnston. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So COVID was a huge deal last year, the year before. I mean, it still is this year, and then we got a bad flu season coming. What concerns do teachers have about COVID in the classroom this year in 2022?
Well, I think like a lot of the public, we have a variety of concerns, and teachers, it's a kind of a special setting, right? You've got a lot of people coming from different households, from different spaces where they have different behaviors and spending a lot of time together in a small space. So we have some members who are still concerned, who you'll see masking up, and we think that should be supported. We think those masks should be provided for students, staff, anyone that wants them.
They're not provided?
They are.
They are provided, and we want to make sure that they're provided everywhere equitably, and that students aren't having to pay for them to bring their own masks. So they are in most places right now, but also along with that is ventilation. Right?
I want to talk about ventilation because you and I have talked on this subject before. I know you've talked to Clint before as well. Because what is true in one jurisdiction might not be true elsewhere. And giving our viewers an opportunity to get to know you a little bit. You're born and raised Fraser Valley, Chilliwack teacher. You know what it's like to be both urban, suburban, rural. It's very different.
It's very different, and as it's very different in a lot of ways, the infrastructure is not any different than that, right? You go around the province and you have some schools that are very new, that are very urban, that are very modern, then you have some that are a little bit older. And when you get out to those ones, that was one of the big challenges during COVID, is trying to upgrade that ventilation system on systems like that is difficult, it's time consuming. So we think that needs to continue, right? I mean, we're talking COVID right now, but as you said, flu season.
The flu.
Yeah,
flu season,
be a bad
right?
one.
Yeah.
You know what I was surprised about? I'm originally from Alberta, and so when I came here, and it was always, teachers are on strike, and we're always labor issues, I assumed the teachers in this province were making more money than teachers in other provinces, and yet some of the teachers I have since met said, actually, the problem is BC teachers are underpaid compared to a lot of jurisdictions, and you have teachers leaving and saying, well, hey, I could buy a house in Alberta and get paid more. Well,
you've actually hit on a really serious issue, and you're absolutely right. We have an issue. You've seen the adverts, I think. Come to Alberta, live in Alberta, whatever it is, right?
Jason Kenney, come on down.
Well, and that's absolutely. We're in the bottom half. I think we're 6th in the country in terms of salary. Yeah, absolutely. And a starting teacher, if they're in Vancouver, they could move to Edmonton, make $8,000 more a year, and have a much lower cost of living, right?
Yeah, so buy a house for about $500,000, if not less.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you keep them then?
Why?
Well, that's the problem that you've hit on, is we're not keeping them, right? They are leaving for those jurisdictions. We're not barely producing enough to keep up with demand for ourselves in our province. But when they see things like that, you're young and you have the opportunity, you take off and buy a house and get started, right?
You're an excellent negotiator. You've negotiated at the Canadian level for the CTF. You've been the vice president at the Bctf. What I'm trying to say is this is not your first rodeo.
No.
How much did the BCGEU settlement
Where are you going like,
peak with you? I don't even know what the right terminology is here.
Yeah.
Well, we're of course happy for any union that gets a deal they think is good for their members, right? And on paper right now, it looks like they got close to what they were looking for, and we always know that where you start and what you're asking for, not necessarily where you land, right? It's good for us. It's great to see what what you likely can expect to be coming down the pipeline. But at the same time, we're very focused on our members, right? They've got a deal that's good for their members, but each sector and each group of union employees has their own needs that we need to make sure we meet. So for teachers, you've been hitting on some of them, right? And that combination of salary and the workload here, it's not keeping people here right now. So
my sister-in-law used to be a principal in Richmond, and some of the stories that she would tell me about the lack of aides in the classroom for kids with special needs, it was just astonishing. They'd be down, we're down, 14 of these people. You've got young children who have a right to go to school, regardless of whatever their particular special
challenge
need is. And there was not the staff for them, and it was such a struggle and challenge. Is that going to change? Why is it like that?
Well, it's like that for a similar reason. I mean, if you talk to CUPE, they would tell you the same thing, right? Their members feel like they got a lot of work on their plate and they're not really paid enough. They're hourly employees. A lot of them find it very difficult to get enough hours as well to make a proper living, right? Where you can live in your community. So that's certainly an issue for them, but it's really a double whammy as well, because often those same students, they might have some special educational needs. And we have members that are called non-enrolling teachers, right? They're not in a classroom with a set number of students. They're supporting those students. And with the shortages, they're often the first to get pulled, and they get put in front of a classroom of students, and then those students lose out on that service, right? So they're not there, or they're not getting service. It's really
it's
a bad
not fair.
situation.
This is flying by way too fast. We're going, I've got like 50 questions, but the one that I think I need to bring forward is the daughter of a teacher. Full disclosure, I have watched my dad feed students, stock a classroom out of his own how often, and how do we remedy the fact that teachers are spending out of their own pocket?
Well, that's I absolutely love that question, and you're right. It's way more common than people think, by the way, because teachers also aware the social dynamics of that and don't widely publicize when they're helping students out that way. But the reality is that if you look at, it's a bit technical, but if you look at funding of education as a percent of GDP, that has been dropping steadily. And it is way, way, way lower than it was even 8-10 years ago, right? So when you have that funding dropping at that base level, you're just not going to be able to continue providing those services. And that's a thing that needs to be addressed.
All right, like Jody said, we could keep going on for an hour, so someday we'll get you back in. You can co-host the whole show with us.
Do it.
Right?
Okay. You heard it here.
I'm writing that down.
I try to stay in my skill set.
Thank you so much. I know a lot
you.
of teachers and parents and students are really interested in this conversation, so thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
Best of luck in the school year.
Thank you.
Jody will sing again.
We're going to check back with Clint Johnston for sure as we get through this school year
of the
our
BC
kids.
Teachers Federation.
Thank you, teachers.
Coming up next on Steel and Vats, this is a subject that is very close to both me and Jody's heart. So we're talking about dementia. If you don't know someone who is suffering right now, you're going to, and it's going to happen soon. And we're seeing a massive spike in dementia cases in this country. So where are we at in finding a cure? Talking about that now.